right. Welcome to the October 5th, 2022 Zoning Advisory Commission meeting. I'm Rich Russell, the Vice Chairperson. I'd like to check with staff to make sure that we're in compliance with the Iowa Open Meetings Law.
We are in compliance, yes.
All right, and call the meeting to order. And roll call, please.
Christ,
Here.
Kemp,
Here.
Mulligan is excused. Norton,
Here.
Russell,
Here.
Semp, and Zucchero.
Here.
All right, the next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from September 7th, 2022. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, motion by Norton, second by Kemp to approve the minutes.
Kemp,
Aye.
Norton,
Aye.
Semp,
Aye.
Zucchero,
Aye.
Christ,
Aye.
Aye.
Russell.
All right, next, well, we don't have any action items, so we'll skip right to the public hearings. How those work is that the applicant will make a presentation. Then the public will be welcome to make comments in favor or against the proposed development. We'll have a rebuttal by the applicant if necessary, a staff report, and then we'll talk about any additional input we receive from citizens via email or letter. And we'll discuss it as a commission, have a motion and a second, and have any further commission discussion, and then we'll vote on the motion. First, I'd like to open the public hearing for the public hearing number 1, rezoning of properties on Pennsylvania Avenue from ag to office residential. Is there an applicant here that would like to make a presentation? Oh, and please step up to the mic and give your name and address for the record to start off, please.
Good evening. Tara Dugan, 11082 English Mill Road. I'm here representing my business, Airborne Investments. Also, I own McDermott Excavating. As some of you may be aware, we have a long history of developing residential subdivisions throughout Dubuque, Piasta, Asbury, Dyersville, and the surrounding areas. We recently purchased these parcels from the Ball family with the intent to follow the City of Dubuque's 2015 master plan and change it to a residential development. We would like to rezone these parcels from agricultural to office residential. The area right along Pennsylvania faces the industrial park, so it is our plan to put some light office in there, maybe a hospice facility or a medical building, and then behind that, use that as a buffer for the industrial center area, and then behind that there would be residential similar to the other residential neighborhoods that are near those parcels.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? All right, thanks.
Thank you.
We'll open it up to public input at this time. Is there anybody from the public who would like to speak on this item? And please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Chad Wagner. I live at 2201 Joanne Drive in Asbury. I'm here tonight just because I have an adjoining property, not directly next to this parcel, but very close by, that's also, I think, was acquired by the same ownership that's the applicant this evening. I'm not sure if I'm here to oppose or be in favor of this development. I'm just kind of getting a lot of this information for the first time tonight. So I guess my one concern would be there's two other parcels that adjoin this one, I believe under similar ownership. And my concern is what would that potential future development look like? Does approval of this zoning request automatically confer similar zoning to those parcels or open it up to make it easier for any specific zoning in the future, I guess is my concern. Talking to other neighbors in this area, we just have some concerns about what the future development might look like. You know, I think with this zoning request, there is a potential for high-density multifamily housing, which is, I think, our primary concern at this time. And I guess one of the other things I'm a little confused by is per the existing zoning regulations, I'm not sure that the definition of office residential qualifies for undeveloped land. So I just question that. I'm also curious about the additional density of any traffic on Middle Road. I'm sure most of you are aware of the condition of Middle Road today. What sort of impact additional housing or traffic on Middle Road might entail. And then if there's any additional residential development in the area, another concern that we have is just access to the schools in this area. You know, I don't know what sort of plans there are for how many families that might eventually be in that particular area, but again, what's the access to the schools from this particular location? There's no sidewalks on Middle Road. I'm sure you all are aware of that. So I guess my primary concern is what's the future potential for the remaining parcels? What kind of zoning opportunities are available, or what opportunities do we have to discuss that in the future? You know, I think the biggest issue for us is I don't think any of us were under any impression that this land would never be developed. We certainly recognize that, but we'd like to be at least have some input on what might actually come up there. You know, I don't think any of us want a large-scale multifamily housing project 10 feet from our property lines up there. So that's our concern. Again, I can't necessarily say if I am opposed at this point, as we're getting a lot of this information for the first time now. So I appreciate your time, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the chambers that would like to address this proposal? Tara, would you like to make any sort of rebuttal to the comments?
First of all, I'll answer Chad's question about the other two parcels. All four parcels were purchased at the same time. They total 107 acres. 107 acres is a very large amount of land to develop, and would be very costly. So we are breaking it up, and for the time being, the other two smaller parcels are owned by our agricultural investment business that owns multiple other farms throughout Dubuque and Jackson County, and it is under lease for the future with the farmer. We have no plans for that right now. We're just gonna leave it as agricultural and let them keep farming it. While we focus on the other two parcels, we wanna keep the project manageable so that we can keep momentum going and develop it the right way. So as far as those other two parcels, they're, right now, the plan is to continue to farm them for the near future. We have been working with the city engineering department and the different utilities to talk about some changes to Middle Road. There are clearly some traffic issues there with the lack of shoulder, and city recognizes that. They have some plans drawn up to widen that road and reduce some of the grades on that road. So we are working with them to make sure that our development accommodates those grade changes and the widening of that road. And really, it's just a matter of timing on the budget side for the city. We don't have any control over when they do it, but we've seen the plans, and it will happen eventually. So we're just accommodating it on our end. If we start earlier, or if they have money in their budget, then they'll accommodate our grading plan. But we're working together on that to make sure that everyone's doing it in the most efficient and cost-effective way. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. At this time, we'll close the public hearing and ask for the staff report.
Assistant Planner Travis Strobelgen. So the applicants are rezoning from Ag to OR. This property was annexed into the city of Dubuque in 2003. There are existing industrial uses to the south, agricultural uses to the east and north, and then residential uses to the west and northeast. Our comprehensive plan promotes a mix of housing and mixed-use developments, and the goals also recommend multifamily development in proximity to jobs to minimize transportation costs, and recommends buffering non-compatible uses from each other. The proposed rezoning would create the opportunity for a mix of office and residential units with proximity to jobs within the Dubuque Industrial Parks to the south and other commercial areas throughout the area. The future land use does designate this area as multifamily residential. Utilities, there are utilities in the southeast corner, sanitary sewer is, and per the annexation agreement in 2003, the city will be adding water, sanitary sewer, all the way out to the property itself within 1 year of an approved subdivision plat. Additionally, public services such as emergency services and trash collection are adequate to serve the site regardless of the use. Any development that takes place here will require a plat, and it'll also require a final plat, both of which are reviewed by the city council. And then any particular specific development also goes through the site plan development process. And that's where you're gonna hash out a lot of these issues with utilities, access, traffic counts, et cetera. We have not received any public input on this project outside of the people here today. This will be heard, your recommendation will be heard at the October 17th City Council meeting. And then just to address a couple of the comments from the neighbor there, those two parcels to the north would remain ag. This is only for the two, this rezoning here is only for the two parcels that's in red up there. So they'd have to go through this process again. There would be a public hearing. And again, we would, after that, receive a plat or site development things or items. Middle Road, as you pointed out, is substandard there, or needs improvement, I would say. And that is in the work in the near future, but no specific plan currently. And that, any access, you mentioned school access. Accesses like that would be reviewed during the platting process. So when they bring in what their plan is, that would then be reviewed at that time. And that's all I have, unless you have questions.
Any questions for staff?
I guess I do have a question. Under the description for office residential, in that first opening paragraph, it says this is not applicable for vacant ground or recently demolished buildings or any of that sort. It's intended to be for infill in the dense portions of the city. With that, I guess I'm just wondering if this might be more appropriate to be reviewed as a PUD. That way we can, look at the various uses, where they lie relative to the neighbors, as opposed to just allowing office residential, all types of residential, and then some light commercial through the whole thing. Obviously the appropriate place for the more commercial aspects would be along Pennsylvania, and it should step down in density or multifamily, single family as you head, well, what I would say north. Is there, what's been the discussion on that
So,
line so far?
yep, so as you pointed out, it does say that. It also says that it's intended to serve as a transitional zone, which it would do, and it is also, it remains flexible, and it allows locations, areas abutting arterial and collector streets, which is what Pennsylvania / Middle Road is designated as. So because of the location and trends, as I'm finishing the preamble here, suitable for development for low-intensity office uses and high-intensity residential uses. So I don't know that there's been a ton of conversation regarding that specifically. The applicants are looking at the uses that are in here, the permitted list of permitted uses here. And that's as far as I am aware.
I wonder if because of the industrial park development to the south, we could consider it to be already developed area of the city?
Yeah, I mean, it's already this is infill development by its nature. You have the industrial park to the south, you have residential single-family development located to the west, you have development to the right, to the north. As they move forward and are looking at the rezoning for the property, the plan, like we mentioned, they've indicated would be the opportunity to have an office-type use along the frontage road. The concerns, obviously, when we have rezonings, where just straight-up zoning, is we're limited to what are allowed as a list of permitted uses in that zoning district. As they look at developing this site, and they've indicated, and you may have to talk to Ms. Duggan with regards to this, is I don't think they have a full plan for the entire site developed at this time, which would bring it to the level of a planned unit development. We don't really want to look at creating a lot of PUDs because those are very specific written ordinances, and we have those located all over the city. If we can have a blanket zoning that can cover areas and be able to address a lot of concerns, we prefer that first and foremost. With this site, as it was mentioned, with the middle road, they are working with the city. The city has a cut and fill plan for that area in order to have access into the property. As we discussed with access along to the school system, that will be all managed through a platting process and site plan and improvement processes for the site. But as we look at it, this is definitely an infill development in our community. We do map all those areas. We have very few areas in our community that is infill. And this area is a transitional zone, like from the industrial area as we step through to single family. So it is quite common that you have a low intensity commercial use to maybe a higher density multifamily use to a single family use. The properties to the north, there is another adjoining property to the north that goes all the way up to Asbury Road, currently zoned agricultural. We would not have plans for that, but as we look at developing this area, we're going to require improvement plans for street roads, street connectivity, for future connectivity to the property to the north. This development does not have approval or rights to go through the property owners that are located in the existing commercial or existing residential developments on both sides to the property because that wasn't platted. They're also in a different jurisdiction. That's the city of Asbury that surrounds this property. So if any connectivity or pedestrian access through those sites would have to be approved through those cities and that process for that. So that's kind of a long-winded discussion to try to answer your question, Rich, but
Thanks.
Well, it goes back to my question, though, is if we just give it a blanket OR to the whole thing, there's no control over where the commercial is, where the high-density multifamily is, where the single family is, and that's my point. I would like to graduate that from high intensity to low intensity as you go away from Pennsylvania, just to mitigate impacts on the neighbors. That's my concern right now. And, the blanket OR doesn't do that for me. Because, there's nothing saying they couldn't just say, you know what? We're office residential. We could put in a, well, what would they allow? Senior center or senior apartments? Schools, some of these bigger uses that, could take up, a medical office. What's the difference between a medical office and, would they want like a Grand River Medical Group building going up in that far back corner? Obviously, that's not a great place for it, but there's nothing saying you can't go there. Do you see where I'm
currently,
going
yeah,
with-
I totally
you see
understand
where
what
I'm
you're
going
saying
this?
with regards to that.
I just don't think office residential is the right.
Right, and this isn't out of the ordinary. We have a lot of properties in our community where we have multifamily, this OR zone, and also where we have residential that butts up against commercial property. And when we go through the site plan review process, And when we adjoin a residential property, there are different standards that have to be applied. We have different setbacks, additional screening requirements are provided. This property has been identified to be high density or our multifamily residential. It is providing workforce housing in our community. We have gone before our city council, and we are short 1,200 units that we're looking at for this area. And this area has been identified for that use because we're looking for workforce housing to be able to maybe supplement the industrial parks for that area. So through the development review process, that we'll handle. I understand what you're saying, Mr. Norton, with regards to there's not a set plan that says multifamily residential development or an office building is going to go right up next to an adjoining property. We do have those areas in our community. We do have a process to go through for that. And so the question would be, you know, even if we did a PUD that shows that, I mean, we would have comments with regards to concerns to having that adjacent to their property. So I don't know if we're going to resolve that issue with regards to that discussion. I know a PUD would be a little bit more defined, and we'll talk about one here coming up here in a different property with regards to that. But as they're moving forward, they're trying to establish the OR office residential to be able to start with that plan. And we will come before this commission for planning processes, and then for that future rezoning of the property to the north. We did notify all property owners within 200 feet of the property. This is a public hearing. We received just the one comment from the gentleman who's here tonight with regards to the property. And this question is, I don't know what's going to happen there. That's what we usually typically hear from a lot of rezonings. It's the fear of the unknown. They'd like to have a little more concrete plans sometimes. But at this time of this request for the office residential, we can't nail it down specifically unless we have a very detailed layout plan for that.
Yeah.
So,
No, I definitely understand the need to be flexible.
yep.
You know, I guess, but I also just want, you know, I would just like to have a little more, I don't know, a little more enforcement behind it just to keep something crazy from happening that's just totally out of place. And I mean, I'm not necessarily sure the plating process is the proper way to do that. I mean, once it's zoned, it's zoned.
Right, and then when we go through the site plan review process with the setback requirements.
Yeah,
everything
then it
that's
is what it
established,
is.
When it's adjacent to a residential property, we have additional standards that are required for that to help mitigate potential impacts to the adjoining properties.
Any other discussion by the commission members? Questions or comments?
Yeah, this is Ryan. First, I appreciate that staff pointed out that we are severely lacking in housing and need to create more housing. I think that's very important to think about when we're talking about this rezoning. Second, I understand the concerns from my fellow commissioner, but we are also working with a very experienced developer here, someone who has done this in other places. And so I think we can be confident that both going through the site plan review that staff just discussed and knowing that this isn't someone that's doing this for their first time, I think I personally feel very comfortable with the recommended zoning. So I'm just going to throw that out there. Thank you.
Right, thanks. Any other commission members want to chime in? Questions, comments? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to rezone the property from ag to OR residential on Pennsylvania Avenue with the PIN numbers listed.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Chris and a second by Norton. Any further discussion? Staff, would you call the roll, please?
Christ,
Aye.
Kemp,
Aye.
Norton,
Aye.
Senf,
Aye.
Zucchero,
Aye.
Russell.
Aye. Motion carries.
So as noted, this will go on to the October 17th City Council meeting for another public hearing before the City Council.
Thanks, Wally. The next item on the agenda is the second public hearing. The applicant is Roger Chairland, Talon LLC. Is there someone here representing the applicant? Please state your name and address for the record to begin.
Good evening. My name is Bob Smith. I'm from 13505 Benson in Sioux Falls. I'm the developer representing the developer and the landowner here. First, I'd like to tell you a little bit about our company. We want to be good neighbors, and it's a delight to be here this evening. It really is. We're excited for this project and be able to contribute to the city. Talon Development has been around for a little while. We've done about 23 developments in 17 different cities throughout the Midwest. From South Dakota, we're familiar with everything here. Eagle Construction is part of actually the forerunner of Talon Development. They've been around for about 20 years. Primarily, they've been commercial, medical, apartments, and they've been focusing on apartments for the last 5 years. They've done about 25 apartments through the Midwest as a general contractor. What I'd like to do now is just briefly go over the project, the land that we're purchasing from Roger Sherlin, and our proposal. We're under contract for about 23 acres of land, and we're going to call this Fox Hills Apartments. It's 390 units of workforce housing, market rate workforce housing. And as we understand, the city is deficient in housing about 1,100 to 1,200 units. This is going to take an add to that significantly. We're experienced developers, experienced managers, and we think that we're going to be a very good asset to the city here. What I'm asking for this evening, as you can see here, the proposal before you is 13 buildings, apartment buildings, and 13 garages with adjoining parking outside. And I won't get too far into this because we're going to be looking at, if you're so inclined to approve this evening for a zoning amendment, we'll be going into the major subdivision, major site plan, preliminary plat, final plat, and development agreement as we proceed through this process. We've worked with the city staff at this point, and we've got to here. But what I'd like to do is explain the land a little bit, too. This land has been, the roads have been installed, as you can see, back in about 2006, 2008 area. The utilities have been installed. Everything has been complete with curb and gutter, but for the final lift of blacktop. What we're doing is we're going to keep that structure of streets and land as it is and work within that on our development. You can see the red ring around the area there with the PID number. That's the 23 acres that we propose to build on. It's in Asbury Park, Asbury Plaza, directly behind the AMC Theater, the Fleet Farm, and the Coles just to the south of that. So we're going to have, as a workforce housing, we're envisioning this thing as a lot of our people are going to work in this area, work in the northern part of the city, and we'll be attributing to the city growth. Though as we're here, we're asking for a zoning change. This has been a planned commercial district for a number of years. The entire area is a PC, planned commercial district. What we're asking for tonight is for, and there's two different ordinances that cover this PC. We're asking that these be, as you can see here, the two different, one is the, don't remember the numbers right off the top of my head here, but they're two different ordinances. With that, we've worked with the staff, and the proposal is to combine the commercial districts and add to it the residential district. The residential part of the PUD would fit directly into that site plan so that in an earlier discussion, the control here is the platting of this property directly for this property. As you can see, we have a larger area of the city here. There's a valley that goes along the left side. There's other areas that have been discussed in 2006 and gone through the process. Those areas we intend not to change. That's going to stay planned commercial. The area that's in the shaded area is the residential area that we propose to build in. This zoning district, the residential zoning district is been designed to fit this area for plat, for use, for definition of the uses and how it's going to be built within the project. As I said, we're going to be building 13 buildings, 390 units in here, and through this process, hopefully that we're going to be a good neighbor. We have some people here this evening, I believe, that will talk in favor of this, some of our neighbors. And if you have any questions, I kind of want to keep this short and simple. Let you ask me the questions, what you think you'd like to understand, and I'll do my best to answer them.
All right, does the commission have any questions for the applicant at this time? No? All right, thanks.
Thank you.
We'll open it up to the public for comments in favor or against the development. Please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Reverend Tom Schinkel, 6625 South Wellington Lane in Dubuque. And I'm also representing the leaders of Grandview United Methodist Church that's in the, if you look at that parcel to the northeast area, we adjoin right there. And so I'm here in favor of making this change and whatever it takes to expedite this along. For what it's worth, we're excited and we're enthused about this project, about what's going to happen down there. We have some possibilities of what we're going to do, what Grandview's going to do with those parcels of land. It's currently in corn, it's being farmed, and we're investigating, working with the Dubuque County Conservation to do some prairie restoration and nature preserve, which seems like a nice fit to have some new neighbors with that many apartments. I also speak in favor of that, obviously, because of the need for workforce housing. So again, we're very much in favor of this. Hope that you vote for that change that these gentlemen and this talent is asking for. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? All right, would you like to make any additional comments, Mr. Smith?
Not at this time, thank you.
All right, I'll close the public hearing and share the staff report.
Yes, Wally Wormont, Planning Services Manager. Just as what Mr. Smith has indicated to you, I'm going to kind of go through like the history and step through and kind of talk how we arrived at the current proposed plan unit development. This property is known as Asbury Business Park. There's been 2 plan unit developments that have been established for the area. The area shown here, shaded in yellow, was established in 2005. And that area was going to be a mix of commercial service and office type uses. And then the area shaded in blue, which was rezoned and actually annexed into the city later on in 2006, came into the corporate limits. And as part of that, they rezoned it to have they have the identical list of permitted uses, accessory uses. It's identical PUD for that. So when they did that, they looked at expanding that PUD requirement, and I have the former or the existing plan in here that was approved for it. So this is the area, this is Asbury Plaza, the PUD concept, but this was the area how it was going to be developed. So you can see here multiple parking lots, multiple office buildings, and then mix of commercial service uses that are located throughout the property. The property was underway. It started some development with regards to it, so there has been some improved real estate out to the property. As mentioned, there are existing streets, and just trying to scroll up to that image here real quick. There are existing streets. We have a lift station that was established in this area. There's existing water to the site. There are some additional public improvements that they'll have to be completed with this development. But what the applicant is proposing to do is to take this area outlined in red, which is a parcel, and this parcel has actually been replatted and reduced in size to actually mimic, and actually is the actual outline of the area that's shaded here in blue. So the intent is to take these two existing planned unit development ordinances and rescind them and create a new planned unit development that includes the area in orange to be basically what was already approved, and this area shaded in blue to be the new planned residential area of that PUD ordinance. And as part of that PUD ordinance, which has been reviewed by the property owner, Roger Churlin, and he signed off and agreed to the conditions and the PUD requirements that are associated with that, will encompass a 390-unit, 13-plex apartment complex, or residential development. And as part of that residential development, we look at certain things that we'll go through a planning process on this, but included in this development and written into the planned unit development is a common building that will include a swimming pool, I believe. There's going to be a playground equipment. There'll be outdoor green space. So when we look at a high concentration of these areas, is that we also look at the park and recreational area that's associated with it. They're actually creating that for for the individuals that are living in this development. This is one of the few properties that we really don't have a lot of these properties that are actually set up with a common space that has the swimming pool and the parkland, which you probably see in a lot of other municipalities throughout the state of Iowa and across the Midwest. In addition to that, there is this little finger that juts off of the side of the development where they're looking at potentially a storage area. Now, once again, this was commercial service / office space. A lot of times when we get involved with a multifamily residential, and what we see, especially in our community being on the river, we have individuals that want to have a boat, they want to have an RV, but they don't have a place to store it, and they like to live in an apartment. So this provides an opportunity that this storage area will be provided explicitly for the residents of the development for that. As part of this PUD, if it's approved for the rezoning, this will go through a subdivision plat. A lot of these areas will be subdivided off. It'll be a major subdivision, which would require improvement plans, which we would look at all the water, sewer, the street improvements, traffic. Plaza Drive is designated and designed to extend all the way through up to Derby Grange Road as a connectivity through the site. It has been designed to carry a high volume level of traffic. And the intention is to have these roads dedicated to the city for public maintenance as we go through the subdivision and improvement plans for the property. In addition to the development, I just want to touch on, what we've been talking at the city council level. So currently, we have a very tight market with a number of residential units that are available. We've been identified to be anywhere between 1,100 to 1,200 units short. We're trying to meet that goal, moving up here to the 2030. 10 years out kind of vision or time frame from here. But this area will provide 390 units. And when we had discussion with the developer, it's like, how's this going to be developed? It's going to be a rolling development where they'll start with one building and the community building, kind of get that built out. And as they lease up, they will continue to roll and develop the area. It has been identified for workforce housing, which is a definitely need in our community. In fact, the developer actually did receive some federal or some workforce housing tax credits for some of the development in this project. As we move forward with it, the next step, if you recommend approval, will go on to the city council. If the city council approves, we would be right back here with a subdivision plat as a preliminary plat. Then we'd have a final plat, and then we'd have individual site plan review for all these developments as we work through the process. We did notify all property owners. within 200 feet of the entire PUD boundary. That's just not this area that we're looking at here, it's the entire area. And then we notify all property owners inside that existing PUD boundary when we look at those. So that's all I have, unless you guys have any questions.
Did you receive any input from the people that were notified?
No, nope.
Any questions from the commission for the staff? I did have one follow-up on that. You mentioned that storage area.
Yes.
Would that be paved?
That may be a question to be asked of the developer, but our current requirement would be that the portions of the vehicle flow areas throughout the site would be required to be paved. There'd be a screening requirement around the area, but I might have Mr. Smith answer that question if.
Yes, sir. We intend to have a driveway that goes through that area, and the storage area will be paved for the exclusive use of the tenants of the development. So it'll all be paved in there. Proper stormwater management will be in there, so there's no runoff and everything. That area will also be aiding the fire department for an additional emergency access. And we're in the process of gaining easements from the theater and from the vacant lot that's behind there. So that whole thing is also very important to the fire department. So they'll be able to go through there. It's not going to be a through road for people to drive through. It's going to have a emergency access up by the theater. So if fire department has to get in there, they will then break the lock and pass through there if there's a congestion at the intersection down by Plaza Court.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion from the commission?
This is Ryan. I just want to, again, say, the city is in dire need of housing, and I think this is a very exciting development. And Wally mentioned, we hear this all the time that we don't have a lot of developments that have that sort of amenities built into it, like a community pool or a central common area. And so I think
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion for the rezoning.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I'd like
Pat?
to make the motion to rezone the requested areas as requested, I guess.
I'll second.
All right, motion by Norton, second by Christ. Any other discussion? All right, roll call, please.
Christ,
Aye.
Kemp,
Aye.
Norton. Semp,
aye.
Zucchero,
Aye.
Russell.
Aye.
This will go on to the October 17th city council meeting as part of a public hearing before the council.
All right, thank you. You're welcome. Next, are there any items from the public that aren't on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to items from the commission. It's from the commission. All right, items from staff.
Nothing from staff, but thanks for vice chairing, Rich.
All right, lastly is a motion for adjournment.
So move.
We have a motion and a second for adjournment.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rich.